How did a country with Catholics, Muslims, Orthodox, Christians, and atheists, Serbs, Croats, Bosniaks, Slovenes, Albanians, Macedonians, and Montenegrins, people who are so different, people who follow different histories and at times hated each other, survive under one flag for nearly half a century? To answer that, we need to go back to the war. In 1914, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand by Gavrilo Princip, a Bosnian Serb, along with many other factors such as international tensions and alliances, triggered World War I. At the time, the Balkans were a patchwork of competing empires and emerging nationalist movements. Serbia was independent, Croatia and Slovenia were under Austro-Hungarian control, and Bosnia had been annexed by Austria-Hungary in 1908. Fueling resentment among South Slavs who dreamed of a common homeland. After the brutal war ended in 1918 and the Austro-Hungarian Empire finally collapsed, countries were suddenly up for grabs. In a move that was more improvisation than vision, the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes was declared in December 1918. It would later be renamed Yugoslavia, which means Land of the South Slavs, but while the war gave them a country, it did not give them unity. The new country contained these modern-day countries. Serbia, the largest group, mainly Orthodox Christians with historical ties to Russia and centuries of resistance against Ottoman rule, which is a pattern in the Balkans. Croatia, mostly Catholic with cultural leanings towards Western Europe, especially Austria and Germany. Slovenia, also Catholic, German and Austria influenced, and more economically developed than the southern regions. Bosnia and Herzegovina, mainly Muslim Slavs who had converted to Islam during centuries of Ottoman rule. Macedonia, whose national identity was denied by many neighbors, especially Bulgaria. Montenegro, similar to Serbs but proud of their separate history. Kosovo, a region with a majority ethnic Albanian population, has long been a source of tension between Serbia and Albania. With that, we are left with the first Yugoslavia that lasted from 1918 until 1941. It failed to solve many problems, especially unity in the Balkans. It was a monarchy dominated by Serbs who didn't even make up a majority. The government struggled with corruption, ethnic tensions, and unresolved questions about autonomy. The result was political instability, assassinations, and unrest. These shortcomings were seen by many nations, and one seized the opportunity. In 1941, Nazi Germany invaded Yugoslavia. The country fragmented almost overnight. Fascist puppet states were created, the most notorious being the independent state of Croatia, ruled by the Ustaše regime. It carried out genocides against Serbs, Jews, and Roma, including building death camps like Jasenovac. Meanwhile, Serbian royalist forces, the Chetniks, engaged in massacres of Muslims and Croats. It was a total ethnic war. Civilians were killed not for what they did, but for who they were. When the war ended in 1945, more than 1 million people were dead in the Balkans. Any hope of unity seemed lost. And yet, from the ashes of that brutality, Yugoslavia was reborn. This time under one man, who unified it once again and vowed to rise it from the ashes. This is Joseph Broz Tito, a communist partisan leader of Croatian-Slovene origin, emerged as the only figure with enough legitimacy to hold the country together. His resistance fighters had fought both the Nazis and domestic collaborators. When the war ended, they took power with Soviet support, but unlike in Eastern Europe, Tito refused to become a Soviet puppet, and in 1948, Tito broke with Stalin and took Yugoslavia on a separate socialist path. This gave him enormous prestige, both in the West and among his own people. Tito redesigned Yugoslavia as a federal state made up of 6 republics. The republics included Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Montenegro, and Macedonia, and 2 autonomous provinces within Serbia, Kosovo and Vojvodina. Each republic had its own government, flag, and role in Yugoslavia. Slovenia was the most industrialized and economically advanced republic, acting as Yugoslavia's gateway to Western Europe. Croatia balanced heavy industry and tourism, with a strong coastline economy and key shipbuilding centers like Rijeka and Split. Bosnia and Herzegovina served as a multi-ethnic industrial heartland, rich in natural resources and home to major steel and military production. Serbia was the political core of Yugoslavia, with Belgrade as the federal capital and a large portion of the military and administrative leadership. Montenegro was less developed, but still contributed to the military because of its mountains and tourism. Macedonia was also less developed, but agriculturally vital and culturally distinct, often used as a political buffer between Yugoslavia and Bulgaria or Greece. Before explaining how Tito and his people pulled this off, it's important to understand why countries like Yugoslavia tend to fall apart. Multi-ethnic states are fragile when groups with long-standing grievances, especially from war or occupation, come together, because they rarely forget them, even if the state tells them to. They also especially struggle when external actors stir the pot. Neighboring countries often support nationalist groups inside a multi-ethnic state to expand their own influence and try to gain as much power no matter the human cost. Both of these were present in Yugoslavia, but Tito held it together for many years. Other countries like the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Soviet Union, and the Ottoman Empire also had this multi-ethnic problem. Tito and the government used many tools to keep the country together, some of which were force. The secret police, UDBA, crushed nationalist dissent. Separatists disappeared and fear was part of the glue that kept the country together. But so was federalism. Because each republic had a sense of self-rule, no group could really claim total dominance, not even the Serbs. Another tool was charisma and prestige. Tito played the global stage well. He became a founding member of the non-aligned movement, positioning Yugoslavia as an independent socialist country between the capitalist West and the communist East. For decades, it worked. Yugoslavia was more liberal than the Eastern Bloc, with open borders, rock music, foreign travel, and even private businesses. It had its own car, the Yugo, hosted the 1984 Olympics, and the passport was welcomed across the world. They were even internationally known for their tourist locations because of the beauty in the Balkan region. Life in Yugoslavia, at least in some parts, felt strangely stable, almost idyllic compared to the other Eastern Bloc neighbors. Citizens enjoyed freedom to travel, a diverse cultural life, and a sense of shared modernity rare in the Cold War Europe. Unlike the Soviets or East Germans, Yugoslavs could visit Italy, France, or even the United States. Western music played on the radio, jeans were sold in stores. People could even drink Turkish coffee in Sarajevo and espresso in Ljubljana, all without leaving the country. The country itself was not short of stunning landscapes. In Croatia, you had the Dalmatian coast, with clear waters and walled cities like Dubrovnik. In Slovenia, you had the Alps, which offered pristine lakes and ski resorts like Bled. Montenegro's fjord-like Bay of Kotor, one of the deepest natural harbors in the Mediterranean, drew poets and painters. Bosnia's valleys and Ottoman-era bridges, like the one in Mostar, hinted at centuries of cultural layering, and even industrial Serbia, with gritty cities like Belgrade, pulsed with nightlife, film, and art. Despite ethnic differences, some people identified as Yugoslav, especially in cities where cultures mixed, like Sarajevo, Skopje, or Novi Sad. State-run housing blocks stood next to mosques, cathedrals, and Orthodox churches. People lived side by side, married across ethnic lines, and sent their children to the same schools. But the unity was fragile, not felt everywhere. When Tito died in 1980, so did the balancing force that kept nationalism in check. The economy unraveled, and unemployment soared, and the IMF's austerity deals hit working families hard. Corruption spread, and republics began asserting independence, first politically, then militarily. By the early 1990s, nationalist leaders like Slobodan Milosevic in Serbia, Franjo Tudjman in Croatia, and others in Bosnia and Slovenia turned ethnic identity into a weapon. An extremely brutal war followed. Many militant groups attempted to seize power, and as a result, the so-called Yugoslav Wars began. The wars started in 1991 and ended in 2001, with an estimated 130 to 140,000 people dead and at least 4 million displaced. The Yugoslav Wars shattered the unity into separate nation-states, marked by bitter division. Slovenia and Croatia were the first to declare independence in 1991, followed by Bosnia and Herzegovina in 1992, triggering some of the worst modern fighting. Montenegro stayed with Serbia until 2006, and by the end of the decade, Yugoslavia had fractured into 7 countries: Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Serbia, and later Kosovo, whose independence remains contested. In a nutshell, ethnic cleansing, sieges, and NATO's interventions turned former neighbors into enemies and redrew the political map of the Balkans. The dream of a united Yugoslavia, once held together by Tito's charisma and fear of the past, collapsed into a nightmare. What had seemed unthinkable in the 1970s became reality by 1991. The ruins of Yugoslavia now lie scattered across 7 countries, but the memory of its brief unity still lingers in photos, songs, and the stories of those who once called themselves Yugoslav.